Shalom, buenos días. Bienvenidos a la rueda de prensa de una nueva película en la sección oficial, DASATSKISI, Beginning. Y para hablar de la película, pues tenemos a buena parte de su equipo, tanto aquí en la mesa como en la conexión online que vamos a establecer enseguida. Presento primero a las personas que están conmigo en la mesa. Tenemos al productor David Sedat, tenemos a la directora Dea Kulum-Begashvili, al productor también Ilan Amuyal, y ahora vamos a ver online a las otras personas que tenemos ahí, ya las vemos. Tenemos a Ia Sujitashvili, que es la actriz protagonista de la película, Rati Oneli, actor también de la película, Arseni Hasaturan, que es director de fotografía, y a Kaha Kinturashvili, que es actor también en la película. Buenos días a todos. Yo creo, no sé si nos escuchan bien. Hola, buenos días. Muy bien. Bueno, pues sin más dilación podemos empezar con las preguntas. No sé quién quiere empezar. Sí, aquí tenemos una ya.
Felicidades primero por la película, porque me ha encantado. Mi pregunta va para la directora y quería saber cuál fue la primera idea o la motivación principal que te llevó a realizar esta película, ¿no? Gracias.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here, talking with us. Initial motivation was I wanted to make a film about a woman who maybe in the more traditional narrative of cinema would be considered to be a secondary character because she is the wife of a religious leader and she is by definition in the background. And I wanted to look closer and examine her life. And I think that while working on a script, I was getting so many questions about the character that I think at some point the anger started to accumulate in me. And I do consider that the sense of anger was there while I was working and while I was writing. And I think that that was the time when I understood that this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted people to look at this woman who was not just conventional in terms of what's an expectation from the main character.
Sí, tenemos ahí otra pregunta.
One question here, Rodrigo from TV Globo. I have a question for you there. It's a very, very strong film. And my question is, your film has a very unusual depiction of religion, especially in times where we are discussing fundamentalism everywhere. For sure, I would like to hear you speaking about this portrayal of religion, but I think it's impossible to watch a movie so strong like Beginning without thinking about Orde, without thinking about Carlos Reigada's movie about Lux Vidia, those films about religions with Ivan Bergman. How did those directors somehow were influenced for your film?
Thank you. I think, and I discussed this with Carlos, by the way. I had the possibility to talk with Carlos about the subject of religion also in his film. And I think what he's interested in is more thinking about the human condition. And for me, the main interest is also the human condition, but I think the difference is that the dialogue is absolutely necessary. And I do consider that films made maybe even like 50 years ago, the great films are there to allow for the dialogue to continue in time, even if the directors are not around anymore. And to talk about religion is a difficult... I never wanted to just talk about one particular religious group, but I wanted to examine the structure where which by definition just sets up the rules and the stage for certain roles that people assume or take, and does not really allow for a personal choice. But we as humans, no matter what religion we have, or maybe we don't, everything still comes down to the personal choice. And that was the most interesting part for me to explore. I wanted to look at the choices and decisions people make, and I wanted to look at the like one particular human being, and or all the characters specifically as human beings.
Sí, tenemos aquí primero y luego aquí. Primero.
Hola, buenos días. Yo quería preguntar sobre a la directora sobre el personaje del deseo, vamos, ese personaje que aparece y luego al final desaparece, como de la forma que lo hace. ¿Cómo lo trabajó en el guión para reflejar pues eso, esos deseos de ella, ese mal, esa parte mala, y al actor también cómo lo trabajó? Gracias.
Yeah, it's Kaha Kinturashvili, the actor who portrayed the Alex character. Well, I did extensive research because I wanted the character to be grounded in the very real, into the psychology of the person I was trying to create on screen, and I think to talk about good or evil as an abstract ideas was not particularly what I was interested in, but I really wanted to explore something which was coming from, again, this one person. Through the research, I was trying to create very, very concrete and specific traits that the character has, which allowed then to work with the actor, because he was also very curious in why do I do this? What's the background? We created entire backstory. We created so much for the character, even though it's not in the film, but we really needed to know, and we really wanted to know, is this the first time this character is acting this way? What's his life? How is he used or maybe even abused by the system that he serves? Is he in some way a victim himself? Or could he have a chance of redemption? And is redemption even possible through the life he lives in? So it was a very tactile, it was very hands-on work that we did with an actor. And even while writing the script, we did a lot of research on different conditions that would lead to the such shift in the behavior, maybe, that the character portrays and displays.
Tal vez Caja puede también contestar a la pregunta, si nos escucha.
ბატონო კახა, შეგიძლიათ კაცად პასუხი თუ გინდათ კითხვას. გესმით ბატონო კახა ჩემი?
Parece que no nos están escuchando, o quizá...
ბატონო კახა, გესმით ჩემი?
No.
გესმით ჩემი ბატონო კახა?
Vamos a ver si podemos solucionar el problema mientras y continuamos y luego dejamos pendiente la pregunta para él. Teníamos aquí otra pregunta.
Yo tenía dos preguntas, las dos para la directora. Bueno, lo primero de todo, quería felicitarle por la película porque considero que está llena de muchas capas e ideas visuales muy atractivas, sobre todo tratándose de una ópera prima. Pero quería preguntarle sobre todo por cómo un film que está cargado de belleza y poesía en todos sus planos se encierra dentro de esta belleza estética una o dos secuencias que presentan hechos un poco horribles y que a mí personalmente como espectador me compromete bastante. Por eso quería preguntarle por qué decidió filmarlos de esta manera tan preciosista y qué reacción buscaba en el espectador con ello.
Why the film is so beautiful? I guess that's how I see life, maybe. I mean, I grew up in this town, which is in the film, and if we look at the beauty of the nature which surrounds this town, it has been there before I was born, and it will be there after, like, I won't be around anymore. And I think that obviously it had a huge influence on me when I was growing up, and especially these like mountains, they were always this. As a child, I thought there was nothing behind these mountains, and when I was growing up, that was the question, what's behind these mountains? So the beauty of the world is just present, it's there, but the violence as well. It's just there. And I think that just to separate these two and to either see one or another would not be the right decision for me. I need to look at the world in more holistic, in more one unity, as one fabric, and why I decided to depict the scenes of violence. Because they're part of life, and they're part of the life of this woman, and I could not look away because we examine her life so closely, of every mundane little step that she makes in her everyday life. We follow her so closely that to look away and not to look at such a huge, I think, life-changing event which happens in her life, I could not allow myself to look away, because I think that maybe we as a society as well often choose to look away. And I knew that it would not be easy to look at what was happening to this woman and to depict it and to film it. But I took it as I had a responsibility. I needed to do it. So I did not consider that there was. I did question how to do it, but it was not a question of not to have it in the film.
Una pregunta un poco a modo de curiosidad. Quería preguntarle también, lo ha comentado un compañero, ¿cómo se realizó la última secuencia con esa desaparición del personaje? A modo de efectos especiales, ¿cómo se realizó?
Yes, it's special effects. I mean, we filmed it first with Caja, and there was a very particular kind of shooting day. And then, we were doing special effects, and I was working with this wonderful artist in Mexico, Diego Vasquez, and he was a huge. I mean, how did they do it? It's very difficult usually to conceive something which is not something which you could look at something real. So my intention was to really look at the essence of what's happening to the character. I did not want it to look like a huge special effect work or to look like a cartoon. I wanted to work with very organic feel and the organic material. And it was like, we worked a lot on sound on that scene because it was very important, like, how does he breathe and where does he stop breathing? And what does it, it was like, I was working with Diego mostly with a conceptual idea. That I remember that I was just telling him that it's the act of disappearance, but in a very material form. Like, it's not him just like disappearing, but he gradually becomes nothing and then something again in the process. And then we started to build it, and it was a very long process actually. I think it worked on 45 days. Yeah, we worked on this shot for 45 days. Like, it was not... Yeah.
Muy bien. Creo que podemos dar paso a Caja ahora, me parece, a ver si nos podría contestar a la pregunta que quedó pendiente antes acerca un poquito de su personaje, ¿no? Y cómo lo trabajó.
Perdona, Caja, ¿qué es mi chemi? ბატონო კახა, გესმით ჩემი?
No, parece que sigue. Bueno, pues de todas maneras, aprovechando también que tenemos aquí a los otros dos actores de la película, a ver, ahora creo que Caja está aquí, a ver si nos puede escuchar.
Yes. Hello,
okay.
everyone.
Ok, hello. Repetimos la pregunta, era sencillamente que nos explicara un poquito cómo trabajó su personaje, ¿no? Porque estábamos hablando de lo que podía representar, ¿no? Y bueno, pues que nos explique un poquito cómo lo ve él.
გამარჯობათ ბატონო კახა, თუ შეგიძლიათ თქვენს პერსონაჟზე ისაუბროთ და როგორ იმუშავოთ თქვენს პერსონაჟზე?
ხო, რაც შეეხება თვითონ პროცესს, ძალიან საინტერესო პროცესი იყო. თავარი საკვლევი ამბავი იყო ის, რომ
La historia fue investigada de antemano.
როგორ შეიძლება ადამიანი არსებობდეს რაღაც კონკრეტულ სისტემაში და თავარი კითხვა, გასაცემი იყო ის, რომ ზოგადად ადამიანი ქმნის ამ სისტემას თუ რაღაცნაირად სისტემა ქმნის ადამიანს.
Era muy importante poder determinar si es el sistema que crea el ser humano o es al revés. Por lo tanto, hemos hecho una investigación bastante profunda acerca de ese tema.
Vale. Estaba diciendo antes, aprovechando que tenemos también a los otros actores de la película, y también quería también a la directora que nos contestara. Yo creo que una de las cosas que más impresionan o más llaman la atención de la película es el trabajo con los planos secuencia, ¿no? Hay escenas de un único plano que duran 7, 10, 8 minutos, y me gustaría que nos explicaran los actores qué significa para ellos esto, ¿no? Supongo que es una manera mucho más orgánica de trabajar la interpretación y cómo tanto la directora como ellos afrontaron este reto, porque claro, son escenas bastante duras, imagino que es mucho más complicado rodarlas de esta manera. Y por favor, aquí sí que si Ia y Rati también pueden intervenir, pues también estaría bien. Si puedes traducir ahí a la pregunta.
გამარჯობათ ქალბატონო ია, გესმით ჩემი? თქვენთვის არის შეკითხვა, აინტერესებთ როგორ იყო თქვენი გამოცდილება პირველი პლანის გადაღებასთან დაკავშირებით. ანუ წარმოგვიდგენიათ, რომ ძალიან ძნელი გადასაღებია და თვითონ მსახიობისათვის ძალიან ძნელია ითამაშოს ამ მხრივ. და თუ შეგიძლიათ რამოდენიმე სიტყვით მოგვიყვეთ იმ გამოცდილების და იმ შეზღუდვების მხრივ, როგორ იყო თქვენთვის აი ამ პროცესის განმავლობაში მუშაობა დირექტორთან და თქვენს პერსონაჟზე.
ანუ გრძელი
მოგესალმებით. Hello. პროცესი იყო ძალიან საინტერესო და ძალიან რთულიც. მაგრამ საბედნიეროდ გქონდათ რომ იმისთვის, რომ აი ეს რაც მკითხეთ გრძელ კადრებთან დაკავშირებით, ბევრჯერ მომიწია ამაზე საუბარი და ეხლაც იგივე ვიტყვი, რომ ჩვენ ყველანი რაღაც ესე ხელჩაკიდებულები გავდიოდით ამ პროცესს. ეს არ იყო ადვილი გზა და ძალიან რთულია იანაზე საუბარი, ზოგადად ესე რაც კონკრეტულად ესე ავხსნა და დასაბუთებით მოვყვე. პირველი მაინც დავიწყებ იქიდან, რომ ყველაფერი იწყება სცენარის წაკითხვით ჩემთვის და იმ ემოციების მიღებით, რაც პირველად ვიღებ სცენარის წაკითხვის დროს. და ვთქვი, რომ ძალიან გული დამწყდებოდა, რომ მე ამ ფილმში არ მიმეღო მონაწილეობა. და დიდი მადლობა დიას იმისთვის, რომ ჩემზე გააკეთა არჩევანი.
Do you want to translate or should she continue talking?
Ara გადავთარგმნი ახლა. Pues bienvenido a todos. Quisiera deciros que el proceso fue muy difícil y muy interesante a la vez. Hemos tenido mucho tiempo para poder investigar y hemos empleado toda nuestra fuerza para poder descubrir mejor los personajes. He hablado mucho acerca de mi personaje, acerca de cómo hemos desempeñado y hemos intentado abordarlo a lo largo de todo el proceso. Y pues estoy muy encantada y muy feliz que la directora me eligió como personaje principal. Para mí empezar a abordar el personaje, empieza desde el principio coger y leer el guión y paso a paso intentando descubrir cómo es su vida cotidiana, qué es en lo que piensa, qué es lo que hace y así paulatinamente poder descubrir y matizar mi personaje. Pues quiero agradecer a la directora una vez más por haber hecho la elección y haberme elegido a mí. Y pues el personaje quiero resaltar que fue muy difícil, pero a la vez muy interesante.
Quizá pueda ahora también ver. Rati, ¿nos escucha?
Okay, it's me or sure. Yes. Well, I'm not a professional actor, but to my surprise, playing these really lengthy scenes was the easiest part of the film. It might come as a surprise, but playing very small, takes was extremely difficult. I don't know why it happened, but it was my discovery. And I think I know why to some extent, because Dea and I worked on the script for about 5 years, and I was completely immersed in the character, even though playing the character came as a surprise just very shortly before the film. But two very important points I want to make is that I have complete trust in Dea's vision as a director. So I never had a slightest doubt whether the character is real, whether the character has real motivations, and that was very important. But also I had this amazing partner in Ia, who is just a brilliant actress, and she treated me from the onset as her equal, which was very, very helpful. So I felt completely at ease in these very important moments. But again, I mean, to my surprise, these long takes, which we rehearsed a lot, and which actually I thought would be very difficult to do because of the pressure of filming on 35 millimeter, were quite easy. Because I guess I had this opportunity to live in the moment. And otherwise, when we had very small takes, it was extremely difficult for me not to be nervous. So that was my experience, basically.
No sé si también Caja quiere añadir algo sobre esto, sobre que él tiene una escena también muy impresionante en la película, ¿no? Que es también un poco cómo fue trabajar de esta manera.
ბატონო კახა, თუ გინდათ რა იმის დამატება და თუ შეგიძლიათ ცოტა დაწვევებით მოგიყვეთ იმ ბოლო სცენასთან შესახებ, ანუ ბოლო სცენის შესახებ, როგორი მუშაობთ და როგორი იყო თქვენი გამოცდილებაო?
Creo que volvemos, no sé. Parece que sigue sin escucharnos.
ბატონო კახა, გესმით თქვენი? ჩემი?
Bueno, intentamos más adelante. Dea, no sé si quieres añadir algo sobre precisamente cómo fue trabajar de esta manera y quizá también demos paso a Arseni, ¿no? Que es el director de fotografía, que supongo que también tendrá que contar. ¿Empiezas tú o damos paso a él?
I just want to talk maybe how Caja worked on this scene, which is very long and it required a lot of very detailed and very nuanced work on the timing and like how the switch from one kind of behavior happens into the something which is totally different, but also how to stay connected with each other for two actors, specifically when he's off screen for a pretty long time and then again he's back on screen. And we knew that we could not do many takes because of losing. Like I don't believe in doing many takes because you start to lose energy and it just starts to become mechanical. So I wanted the energy to be there, and we were rehearsing the scene. I think for so long, and we started to rehearse it maybe 3 months before we started to shoot. But then I was constantly trying to change things because for me it's extremely important that there is a script. I like it, actors like it, but then when you work with these incredible actors, they give you back so much, which starts to also shape the scene into something slightly different. The main thing for me is to keep the essence, but for the rest I want to explore what they're giving me, and I want to take something from them which they bring to the scene, which maybe or surely I have not even thought about. So with this in mind, we were constantly exploring the nuances, and then I just really want to thank all the actors for how much they participated even in choosing their wardrobes. Like all of them went with the costume designer even for the shopping and picked up their wardrobes really on their own, because we had this idea in mind that I wanted these actors to, as characters, inhabit the spaces and places, and we rented this house really early on. And we wanted actors to be there, to spend as much time there as possible, and for Ia to even arrange things. Like, she was working with the set designer. She was like helping us to see where would this woman, the character of Iana, put something in her house. So it was a very complex process, and actors participated a lot. It was not just them stepping on set and performing something, but it was a much more like layered approach to the to acting, and I am incredibly grateful to all of them because they really brought so much to the film.
Sí, decía también que como tenemos a Arseni, que es el director de fotografía de la película, ¿no? Sería también muy interesante que nos explicara cómo fue el proceso de rodar estas escenas. Hola, Arseni.
Hi.
Decíamos que, bueno, que también nos interesaría conocer tu punto de vista sobre cómo se rodaron estas escenas y cómo fue el trabajo, ¿no? con Dia y con los actores.
I think it was very magical, to be honest. That's Dia's vision, and that's the way she directs. What it means for me is that there is so much preparation happening before we actually shoot a certain scene or a shot. First she does rehearsals in the studio, then we do rehearsals on location. We really get to see, like, for me it's very important to get to see how actors move in space, how they relate to the environment around them. You go through all these steps and you get to really learn. I get to really learn what is there after, what is she looking for in each particular scene in the film. And then after you get to location and you actually start to shoot, it takes a long, and you really get to see the details and nuances in every single little detail. Really learn, really study every single thing that you're doing. Every shot and every scene is studied carefully. And after you do all this work, it really allows some magic to happen. There is a certain emotion, there is a certain atmosphere that appears on top of all this work which is done, which is very gratifying, which is amazing for me, because you really have, you can do so much, but then you actually get to this point to see the film happening. You look into the camera, you look into the viewfinder, you see actual things come to life on top of all this work which was done. And from a technical point of view, of course, but it's a good thing. I think it brings a lot of discipline, it brings a lot of focus. It's not easy for actors, I'm sure, but it brings a certain requirement. They know they have to do their best as well. And I think it just puts everything together. It's a great way. It's a great way to work. Yeah.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Creo que tenemos a Caja ya disponible ahí. Hola.
Yeah.
Sí, pues sencillamente, sí, por fin, aquí está. Pues también un poco como sus compañeros, que si nos podía explicar cómo fue rodar, especialmente esta escena que tiene con Ia, ¿no? Que es muy, muy impresionante, ¿no? No sé si está recibiendo.
გაისმის ბატონო კახაჩემი?
დიახ.
თუ შეგიძლიათ მოგვიყვეთო ბოლო სცენასთან დაკავშირებით, რომელიც ქალბატონიასთან ერთად გადაიღეთ, რომელიც საკმაოდ ძნელი და რთული სცენარისო, თუ შეიძლება თქვენი გამოცდილება მოგვიყვეთო და როგორი იყო პროცესი გადაღების?
ბოლო სცენას, ანუ გაუპატიურების სცენას გულისხმობენ ალბათ, ხო?
როცა მიდის პირველად იასთან.
როდესაც პირველად მიდიხართ იასთან, აი იმ სცენას გულისხმობენ.
ბატონო?
როდესაც პირველად მიდიხარ დიასთან, ქალბატონიასთან.
პირველად როდესაც მივიდივარ, ზოგადად მაგ სცენაზე. ხო, ნუ ეგ გამხსნელი სცენაა, ესე ვთქვათ, ჩემთვის და ჩემთვის, ჩემი პერსონაჟისთვის. რაც შეეხება იასთან მუშაობას,
Es el primer escena que abre.
პირველად ვქონდა რეალურად შეხება კინოში. მიუხედავად ჩემი დიდი პატივისცემისა მისდამი. და რაც შეეხება ზოგადად მაგ სცენას, აი როგორც არსენი აღნიშნა, ძალიან რთულია რა იმ კადრში ყოფნა, რომელსაც სიტყვაზე იმ მომენტში დეა და არსენი გვთავაზობდნენ, იმიტომ რომ აბსოლუტურად ჩანს შენი ყველა განცდა და ყველა სხეული და შეიძლება ნებისმიერმა მოძრაობამაც კი გაგყიდოს თუ არ ხარ ჩართული თავიდან ბოლომდე.
Bueno, quiero señalar que es la primera escena, el que abre el camino a mi personaje, es la primera aparición de mi personaje en la película. Quiero resaltar que respeto mucho a mi compañera del trabajo, que es muy buena actora. También quiero decir que, como señaló previamente Arseni, es una escena muy delicada. Se tiene que intentar desempeñar el papel con mucha delicadeza, porque cualquier movimiento erróneo podría sacarnos de esa magia que intentamos crearnos. Por lo tanto, fue una escena muy interesante, pero a la vez muy difícil y delicada de hacer.
Muy bien. Creo que teníamos una pregunta aquí.
Sí, hola. Sí, pero bueno, si quiere. Bueno, yo quería preguntarles a los productores y a la directora si este tipo de cine es muy habitual en su país, qué riesgo estaban asumiendo rodando una película tan especial, tan dura, tan extraña, tan comprometida. Y para la directora, precisamente eso, si se está saliendo de la raya que se marca en el cine de su país, quiere que la identifiquen con este tipo de cine, o esto es un primer paso de presentación y luego quiere hacer otras cosas.
So is it, sorry, just the question was if I want to identify with the cinema in my country or... I think that my country, Georgia, has the great tradition of cinema, and it's diverse, and Georgian directors in past, and at the moment everybody has their own voice and their own vision. And I'm sure that there are many young directors who are now maybe working on their first features, who will be something on their own and unique, and maybe I consider that to be the beauty of the cinema from my country, that everyone has something on their own. I don't know how would I specifically identify with something like as... I don't believe in a style in cinema, for example. I think that every film is something on its own. And as for me, personally, it's not a technical exercise to go on and just explore the technique and the approach that I had for this film. I think every film brings something on its own, and for the director, it's perhaps the film that speaks back to you, and it's not you who is imposing something on the film. So at the moment, I am thinking about a new film, and I very much hope that it will be something totally different and something on its own. So I'm not specifically fixated on one thing at all.
La pregunta también iba para los productores, ¿no? Parece. Sí, los productores quizá también pueden.
Yes, I think this question has a double meaning for us because we're the French side of this film, so our country has a maybe different tradition of cinema, but we were very happy to continue in the tradition of Georgian cinema that we actually love. But we didn't go behind the vision of a type of cinema. It was really the vision of a director And we were very happy to support Dea, and hopefully her vision questions any form and any style.
Sí, no sé si David quiere añadir algo.
For the French side, no, but maybe Rati, as the Georgian producer, has a take on it.
Sí, sí nos escucha.
But
Rati.
it's not that easy to speak about, like Dea said, about where this film belongs or where it doesn't belong. In our opinion, and I think I would not be amiss to speak on behalf of my French colleagues as well, what they presented after so many years of gestation was so novel and so new and so fresh. I don't like that word fresh, but it's difficult to describe it in other terms, is that I myself have never seen anything like this. And no matter whether it's a Georgian film or a non-Georgian film. And it was very fascinating to work in this direction, which is unexplored, specifically in Georgia. And so that was my initial reaction to when she shared her story and her vision with me. So I think she knows better where she, herself belongs. I don't know. I cannot answer to that. But to me personally, as a producer, it was something completely new and completely fascinating and challenging, actually, to work. So.
Sí, teníamos aquí.
Hi there, me again. You used the word beauty, speaking previously, and the nature of your film is really beauty. I would like to understand what would be for you the aesthetical use of nature and the aesthetical use of silence. Your movie is very silent and your movie is very nature. Could you say a few words about?
Sure, thank you. If we talk about the beauty of nature, it's interesting to think it's the beauty of a landscape or the beauty that each character, even like the ones that bring evil, maybe their pain, something within them, or something they trigger, something they represent. In a way, it's the search for beauty, maybe, but not aesthetical, but in maybe more complex understanding of it. And Yana, the main character, is the representing beauty for me. Aesthetically speaking, I was really not trying to aestheticize the beauty of nature. It's just really what it is there. For example, the pink flowers in the rape scene, they just were there. This location is behind the house where the characters live. It's like literally right there. And for me, it just made sense because I want to stay honest, and I want to be truthful to actual places and actual locations. I did not want to shoot on stage. I wanted to actually shoot in the house and which these characters would live in. As for the silence, and we had huge discussions about it because there were people who considered it risky to have so much of the silence in the film. But for me, there was not a question because this is how this woman lives. She moves through the spaces in silence. She does not communicate with many people. And also, what is silence really? I mean, that's the question there as well. You can create the silence and then punctuate it with like little sounds so it's highlighted, or you can actually try to listen to what character hears. And I think that's the different approach to the silence or to the sound, because silence is part of soundscape. And I was absolutely, I think, obsessed with the footsteps in the film, because I think that that's the sound that the character hears most of the time. Like, she listens to her footsteps. And it was important for me, like, when do we hear a footstep like before she appears in the shot? Is she aware of her footsteps or not? But the essence of this film for me is about looking, to really ask the audience to look what's in front of us. And maybe that's sometimes the most difficult thing to do, to just look. And I guess silence was the instrumental part of, like, to invite the audience to look.
Tenemos otra pregunta aquí.
Hola de nuevo. Mi pregunta es para Dea otra vez. Para mí, y creo que para la mayoría de la audiencia, el momento más impactante obviamente es el de la violación. Quería preguntarle, porque la violación que sufre esta mujer es como después de ellos se normaliza o se hace de menos lo que esta mujer ha pasado por parte de su marido. Quería saber si quería reflejar una realidad incómoda para nosotros, porque es algo que muchas mujeres, independientemente si pasa en Georgia o en otros países, pasa, que se las juzga y se las culpabiliza por ello, en vez de ser ayudadas. Gracias.
Yes, that was one of the key points of the research that I was doing before, like maybe 2 years. I was doing it maybe for 2 years. I was talking to different therapists who helped me to talk to the women in groups of survivors of sexual assault, and it was very difficult, and it was a very delicate subject for me to start with, because how do you approach the subject of such violence and not, because this is you cannot dramatize it. It is what it is, and I did not want to have any cuts. I did not want to move the camera. I did not want to do anything, because I thought that it is so horrific for what it is that I think it's impossible not to feel, and I think that anybody would feel something which is their own. Maybe they would connect with the pain which is their own. And then I was reading and I was talking to people, and I think the most difficult for women is to really talk later on, because the main and the most difficult part is blaming yourself. And I think that's the character also has this sense of shame, sense of like blaming herself, or thinking that maybe it came upon her as a punishment for her to want something beyond the comforts of her domestic life. And understanding, I mean, also it's difficult, like, what does it mean to understand? How much do we need to know about the pain of another person in order to empathize? How much does she need to tell to her husband? Maybe she doesn't want to say more. Maybe it's just, or when she goes to her mother, like the right question is never asked. And there is constantly this tension between these two women when one knows that something really horrible happened in the life of another, but she as well like almost like shies away or steps because maybe she doesn't want to know. I think maybe we as a society often don't want to know what's really happening, even in the lives of people we love. So I think it was the delicate subject to approach, but with Ia we did a lot of work about like how much she would say, how much she would not say to her husband. And actually it was one of the most difficult scenes to shoot, and we shot it twice, specifically the shot on David, because to really grasp the right emotion, which would be something between anger, frustration, feeling powerless, feeling devastated, but also being enraged and feeling somehow betrayed by this woman. I think everything is in the character of David as well, because for him to really acknowledge what just happened and to take his part of the responsibility is so impossible in that moment that he just refuses to do so. And in that regard, maybe I just want to say that this film for me is about many points of no return. The characters are just carried through by some power, and we as an audience, I hope when we look, we can think that, oh, maybe this is the point when they need to stop and they need to question and they need to reflect, but they don't. And I think the question for me is like, do we actually stop in our lives, and what do we do with our lives actually?
Sí, quizá Ia podría también darnos su punto de vista, ¿no? Sobre cómo trabajó al personaje desde esta perspectiva, ¿no?
თუ შეგიძლიათ ქალბატონო თქვენი აზრი მოგვაწოდოთ, ან როგორ იმუშავეთ თქვენს პერსონაჟზე, სპეციალურად აინტერესებთ ან გაუპატიურების სცენა როგორ მოამზადეთ, რა კვალი დატოვა თქვენში, როგორ იყო თქვენი განცდა ამ როლის შესრულების დროს და თუ შეიძლება როისრაბლოთ თქვენს გამოცდილებაზე და თქვენს შეგრძნებებზე ამ სცენასთან დაკავშირებით.
ძალიან კარგი სიტყვა ახსენეთ, შეგრძნება, იმიტომ რომ თავიდან ბოლომდე ეს პროფესია არის სწორედ შეგრძნებებზე დაფუძნებული. თუ არ გრძნობ ამას, ისე არაფერი არ გამოდის. რაც შეეხება მთლიანად მთელ პროცესს, იგივე ხა გაუპატიურების სცენაზეც მკითხეთ და იქ არის კიდე რაღაც სცენები, რომელზეც ალბათ დაისმება ცალკეულად კითხვები. სიმართლე რომ გითხრა, თითოეული გადაღების დღე იყო, როცა არ ფიქრობდი სხვა მეორე დღეზე, ცხოვრობდი კონკრეტული ამ დღით. ადეგი გზას, რომელიც უნდა გაგევლო ბოლომდე. უნდა გეცხოვრა ამ გმირის კანში. უნდა გესუნთქა, როგორც ისუნთქავს ის. უნდა ქონოდა ის ემოცია, რაც ქონდა იანას. ეს იყო ძალიან უცნაური შეგრძნება, სიმართლე რომ გითხრათ, იმიტომ რომ ადამიანები, რომლებიც თავის ემოციას ძალიან კაფიოდ გამოხატავენ, შეუძლიათ ყვირილი, შეუძლიათ ტირილი ხმამაღლა, ადეკვატურები იყვნენ ესეთ ემოციებთან, რაც ხდება მათ გარშემო. ეს ბევრად ადვილია ისედაც ადამიანისთვის. და ბედნიერები არიან ესეთი ადამიანები, რომელსაც ემოციის ესე გამოხატ, მაგრამ აი როდესაც შიგნით ტრიალებს ეს მთელი ემოცია, შიგნით ივსება და გასასვლელი თითქოს არსად არ აქვს, ესეთი ადამიანები საკმაოდ საშიშებიც არიან. სხვათა შორის ეს გრძნობა, შიში ყოველთვის რაღაცა თან ახლდა ამ გმირის კეთების დროს. აი როცა ვახსენე სცენარის კითხვა, პირველი რაც იყო, უცნაური შიში დამეფლა, მაგრამ არ წაგიღოთ ახლა იმისკენ, რომ აი ტიპიურ შიშზე მაქვს საუბარი. რაც უცნაური შიშის გრძნობა იყო. მაგრამ ეს ემოციაც, რა თქმა უნდა, საჭირო იყო დავტოვე ეს ემოცია ჩემთვის. რაც რაღაცა გარკვეული ფერი ჩემთვის მქონოდა ამ გმირის კეთების დროს. ძალიან მადლობელი ვარ და ძალიან გამიმართლა, რომ სწორედ დეას შევხვდი ამ გზაზე. იმიტომ რომ ჩვენ რაღაც ესე ხელჩაკიდებულებმა გავიარეთ ეს გზა მთლიანად. თითეული სცენა ესეთი, აი როგორიც გაუპატიურების სცენა იყო, კიდე წყალთან მაქვს რამოდენიმე სცენა, რომელიცაც მე საშინლად მეშინია ცხოვრებაში. ესეც დამეხმარა ეს შიშები ამ პერსონაჟისთვის. მე კიდე ერთხელ ძალიან მიჭირს ამ გმირზე ესე საუბარი, იმიტომ რომ ის რასაც ზედმიწევნით უფრო გრძნობ, ჯობია გრძნობებში დატოვო შენთვის, ვიდრე ამაზე ესე ხმამაღლა ისაუბრო. თვითონ ფილმიც უცნაურად ისეთია. ჩუმი ფილმია. სწორედ ემოციაზე მაქვს ლაპარაკი, რომელიც ყოველთვის მუდმივად შიგნით ტრიალებს. შიგნით და აი ამას ესე მე მიყვები და გამოგაქ, როცა საჭირო არის. ძალიან საინტერესო პროცესი იყო და მინდა გითხრათ, რომ იანა ესე ადვილად არ წასულა მერე ჩემგან. ყოველთვის ხედავდი ვარდისფერ ჯემში ჩაცმულ ქალს, რაღაცა პერიოდები იყო ჩემს გვერდით. Ese adulad არ დაუტოვები ვარ ამ გმირს.
Quisiera decir que, como hemos señalado anteriormente, la sensación, la profesión del actor y de la actriz está basado en las sensaciones y de intentar expresar esas sensaciones a través de la película. El proceso, me imagino, siempre habrá pregunta acerca de esas escenas y quiero decir que la escena en sí, la deliberación, es bastante difícil. a la hora de grabar esa película y rodar cada escena, en ese día, en el concreto día, intentas vivir como esa persona. No tienes tu vida propia, estás inmersa en su totalidad en ese personaje. Es como si dejas tu vida aparte y empiezas a vivir la vida de esa persona que estás desempeñando. También quisiera señalar que la escena del río también fue bastante difícil para mí. También quiero señalar que el miedo racional o quizás a veces irracional que suele acompañar a mi personaje, esa sensación la suele caracterizar también muy bien. Yo estoy muy agradecida y quiero agradecer una vez más a DEA por haberme elegido a mí. Yo diría que es una película de nosotros también, pero de nosotras, porque hemos intentado matizar, transmitir y intentar crear ese personaje de manera conjunta. Yo quiero también decir que aunque la película y el rodaje se haya acabado, ese personaje siempre va a dejar una huella en mi personalidad y va a ser uno de los personajes más favoritos y que me va a acompañar a lo largo de mi vida como actriz. Y también quiero señalar que a veces siempre me suelo ver con ese vestido rosa que solía llevar Yana.
Muy bien. Bueno, tenemos que ir terminando ya la rueda de prensa. Hay una última pregunta que nos ha llegado vía email, así que voy a leerla. Es para la directora. Es una pregunta que nos hace el periodista David S. Blanco de Desist Film. Y lo que nos pregunta es por qué la directora cree que molesta tanto al público ver escenas de violencia, como estas de las que estamos hablando, por qué las ve como una provocación cuando en realidad deberían ser objeto de reflexión, ¿no? ¿Por qué cree que a veces estas escenas son recibidas de esta manera y no se entiende su verdadero sentido, ¿no?
Well, I think that thank you. I think that for me, the violence is just part of life, as beauty, as love, and maybe love can be violent sometimes, and it is maybe in this film. And any kind of, I'm not in particular fond of provocation in cinema. That's why when I was working on this film, for me it was extremely important, even with the rape scene, to keep a distance from action and to put the camera far away enough so it would be maybe the accidental passerby could I did not want to put the camera closer. I did not want to dramatize it. I did not want to cut it, because I think that violence can only serve as the part of the fabric and part of the experience that the characters are living through. It should be something which is or really from the life of this characters, but in any other way, if the violence just serves the purpose of shocking, or if it's just there to attract the attention, I would never I'm not fond particularly of
Muy bien, pues bueno, tenemos ya que terminar. Solo nos queda agradecer al equipo de la película que haya venido aquí a San Sebastián con ella. Es un placer tenerlos aquí y solo también desearles muchísima suerte con la película aquí en San Sebastián y también en su futura trayectoria. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias también.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.